We should be live. Welcome everyone that's tuning in for this event, the Science of Motivation. So last time I tried to go live, it ended up me talking to myself for a little bit. So hopefully I'm actually live on LinkedIn now. I'm just going to check if you don't mind. Yeah, cool. So thank you for anyone that's kind of joining, tuned in to watch this. I asked LinkedIn, I've been hanging out here a little bit more recently, and I asked you guys, what would you want to know a little bit more about in either a fitness, a personal development, a coaching capacity? Motivation is something that came up. It comes up quite a lot with clients and prospective clients that I talk to. It's something that potentially they struggle with, or they struggle to keep consistent. So today what I wanted to do is really talk to you a little bit about how you can actually stay motivated for the long term, how you can actually start to hack your motivation levels. And rather than having motivation that wanes, yo-yos, you actually stay motivated. So I'm calling this the science of motivation. And I've pulled together like a few, maybe it's like 5 key takeaways, 5 key points that you can kind of consider either from a personal perspective or from a business or an organization perspective. So I'm going to go ahead and grab those slides for you guys, and I'll kind of just talk you through them. So the first thing I wanted to do is actually define what motivation is. So motivation is a reason or reasons for acting in a certain way. It's the external, and external is the important point, and I'll tell you why in a little bit. It's an external process that it initiates, it guides, and it maintains goal-orientated behavior. So that basically means that it's the vehicle that's going to get us towards our goals. And when motivation is high and consistent, it becomes much easier to achieve our goals, our desired outcomes. When it's yo-yoing or when it's low, it's a real uphill struggle. It's a lot harder to do. So let's start with like the first way that you can actually start to improve your motivation levels. And there's a great quote here from Steve Jobs, and he says, if you're working on something exciting that you really care about, you don't have to be pushed. Your vision pulls you. Now, I love this because a coercive vision is something that should get you out of bed in the morning. It should inspire you to take action. It should allow you, when all of those emotions about being stressed or wanting to give up or being overwhelmed or thinking that you're not good enough, as those emotions start to creep in, what a coercive vision does, or a well-articulated vision, is it allows you to fight those emotions, those negative emotions, with more positive ones. And if it's strong enough, it pulls you in the direction that you want to. And it ensures that your motivation levels, even if you've had a really stressful day, even if you've had a really crappy week and nothing's gone right, you still get to where you want to get to at the end of the day. So another way that you can start to keep your motivation levels higher is to start to set goals. Now, anyone watching this either live or on playback might be saying, okay, you set goals, like I've done this, I've heard this before. I've put in brackets the right way. Now, I'm not saying that this is necessarily the only way. This is the way that I've found has been the most useful. I've developed this system of setting goals over the last 7 or 8 years, and I refined it every year. And it's something that I use week to week, month to month. It's something that I use with my clients. So it is working, it is adding value. Now, the first thing to note is that for goals to actually mean something and for us to continually be motivated towards them, we want to make sure that they're aligned to our values. That is the things that we actually care about. the things that are important to us. And my values will be different to your values, which will be different to the next person's values. So the first part is just to understand and become more conscious of what it is that you value. And as you start to do this, then you can start to put in place a SMART goal. So a lot of people, maybe they'll come to me and they will say, I want to lose weight. Okay, cool. How do we start to smarten that up a little bit? How do we get it to a place where it's, I want to lose 20 pounds over the next 12 weeks so that, and you align it to their value, I can go on holiday and take my top off and feel more confident. Or maybe it's even stronger than that. And it's like, so that when I sit down, my son or daughter doesn't call me like overweight or say, mummy or daddy, why are you so fat? Okay, that's a really strong reason that aligns your goals to your values. Now, the next stage is, before we actually set goals, is understanding about where we've been so that we can project forward of where we want to go. And what I mean by that is understanding over the last quarter, the last 6 months, the last year, what went well? What are you most proud of? What wins did you have? Right? We want to celebrate those things that you accomplished, the actions, the tasks, but we also want to celebrate and acknowledge how we felt, what emotions came up. Because when we can start to harness that, we can project that forward and say, okay, when I did this, I felt this way, and I want to replicate more of that. So if someone's saying, I want to be happy, okay, it's a little bit vague. Let's break it down. What were you doing that made you happy? What specifically gave you that emotion? And by doing that, we can start to plan and project that into your future goals. And equally, if you felt a certain way, let's say certain negative emotions came up. Maybe it was like a breakup. Maybe it was like starting to neglect your health. Maybe it was that you've been sat for the last year or two, not moving forwards in your career. By acknowledging that and reflecting back on that, we can start to plan moving forwards and actually put in place a system and a structure to get you away from that place of pain. And as we do that, as we get you away from that place of pain, we start to motivate ourselves more consistently to take action towards that place of pleasure, whatever it is you're defining in your goals. Another thing that's really important to do when you're setting goals the right way, right, is to break them down. When we get business goals or organization goals, sometimes when we even set goals ourselves, they can be so big, they can seem so out of reach, so unachievable, that we don't take action towards them. We feel stuck in a rut. We feel like we would rather just stay here doing nothing than actually try. We don't even know how to take the first step to achieve our goals. So one way of doing this, and the way that I do this with my clients, is to say, okay, what's the 18-month goal? And then ask just one question, like, what do you have to do in the next 6 months to have a 90% chance of certainty of success in achieving your 18-month goal? And then we break it down further. We ask the same question, like, what do you have to do in 3 months to ensure that you have a 90% chance of success to achieve the 6-month goal? Until you get to 1 month. And when you're at the 1 month point, that's when you can actually start to turn those goals into actionable steps. What specific tasks, what specific actions do you have to take that you can do within that month that are going to take you towards your overall 18-month goal? And by doing that and breaking it down, you start to construct in your mind a way that you can believe that you can achieve those goals. And actually your motivation stays at a much higher level. You can also, with your goals, it's important to review them regularly, okay? Now, there's 2 reasons we do this. One is so that we can keep a track of our progress to them and celebrate the wins, celebrate the successes. But the other is to remain conscious and aware of what the goal is, to remind ourselves of how far we've come and how far we've got to go. If you set a goal at the beginning of the year, let's say in January, and you don't loop back round on it until the following December, or even worse, the following January, That's 365 days where something could go wrong. Now, if you've got monthly check-ins and you have a system and structure in place to review your progress, that's like 30 days when something could go off course. Or if you have a weekly cadence, you can check your progress 52 times in the year, and there's only 6 to 7 days when things can actually go off course. It allows you to replan. It allows you to refocus. It allows you to actually monitor your progress much more effectively. And therefore, not only does it keep you accountable, but it also motivates you. So the next way, or a third reason why you can keep your motivation levels high, is to start to shape the path. Now, I got this concept from a great book by Chip and Dan Heath called Switch. And in the book, they talk that what often appears as a motivation issue is actually a lack of clarity. Okay, so when we think that people aren't doing the right things in like a business sense or an organizational sense, or even when we aren't doing the right things, what can sometimes look like we aren't motivated to do it, it's actually like we're just not sure what we're supposed to be doing. We're not sure of the steps. We need to shape the path. And there's a couple of ways that we can start to do this. We can tweak the environment. Okay, we can start to tweak the environment and make it easier for ourselves to actually achieve our goals. And we can also start to build habits that make it more automatic for us to take a desired action or behavior. So one of the ways of doing this is like that pulls both of these together is creating checklists. Okay, sounds really simple, sounds too simple. The simple solutions are often the best. Creating simple checklists starts to build a habit of taking a certain response and also starts to help you tweak the environment. I'll give you a practical example. When you want to lose weight and you're trying to get in shape, like getting up and exercising in the morning before work might be an option that you want to go for. And in order for this to work effectively, or for you to keep more motivated to consistently taking the action and build that habit, you might start to put your gym kit out in the morning, your trainers by the front door, make sure that the water bottle's full up, make sure that your lunch is ready and your bag's ready for the next day. Simple things like hacking your environment or tweaking your environment like this, when done over time, starts to reduce the cognitive load and make it easier for you to take the desired action. And as you start to take that desired action, it really keeps that motivation high. Okay, it builds momentum. So the fourth way, right, and this is probably the key out of everything, this is the most important. And that is to actually make it motivation internal. You'll remember at the beginning of the presentation, I was talking about how motivation is linked to an external stimulus. Now, because it's linked to an external stimulus, when that external stimulus is removed, what can sometimes happen is that your motivation starts to decrease. You're no longer motivated by that external goal. You're no longer motivated by achieving that thing that you set out to because it no longer exists. However, if you can start to align things to your vision and your values and start to internalize it, then what you can do is you can start to shift to a space of inspiration. You're inspired to take action. And this is very heavily linked to your beliefs, okay? Now, beliefs can be twofold. They can either be empowering, empower you to take action, or they can be self-limiting. And it's important to acknowledge any perceived limitations that we put on ourselves. And it's particularly important because if we have a limitation or self-imposed limitation and we constantly do this, we don't believe that we can actually achieve the goals that we set out to achieve, then we reach a point of what's called self-sabotage. And that's where we're consciously looking to actually sabotage our own results towards our own goals. So the best thing that we can do with motivation is actually not rely on these external stimuli, but actually to internalize that and find ways to link our values, our vision to the goals that we want to achieve. And the final way that we can make sure that our motivation is staying high is to leverage your energy. Okay. Unfortunately, our brains haven't evolved from where our ancestors' brains were. And the brain's role then was to keep our ancestors safe. It's still to keep us safe and to conserve energy. And unfortunately, our brains will interpret negative signals 3 times more strongly than they will positive. It's because if a saber-toothed tiger or woolly mammoth was going to jump out and kill you, that was it, you were going to die, right? Whereas if you came across like an abundance of crops and fruit, right, you could still come across that again at some point down the road. So our brains are hardwired. They've got this, you can think of it as like a kill switch within the brain called the amygdala. When that's triggered, you focus on survival, you focus on the negative aspects, and that can basically stop access to other parts of the brain, the more advanced part of the brain, the neocortex. So when we understand that the brain's role is to keep us safe and conserve energy, we need to start to hack our day. And we can do this in a few different ways. I do this with something called the CEO method and organize and structure my day in a 3-step process. Okay. So the first step is getting clarity on when do I feel like I have the most energy? When do I feel like I get the most done? The second step then is starting to energize both the mind and the body. So the body is done through adequate nutrition and hydration. The mind is done through continual personal development, ritual and discipline practices. And the last part of the CEO method is optimization. So it's starting to consistently put in place the habits and structures that's going to give you more energy. I did a video about this earlier this week of things that you can do in the morning to actually give you more energy so that when you start work or whenever you start what you're doing for the day, you have more energy. A couple of things here that you can start to do as well. So you can start to limit distractions. So any notifications on phones, emails that aren't critical, you can start to turn these off. And I'm put down here like take breaks. I don't mean like take regular breaks like, oh, I'm going to take half an hour. Busy people find this really hard, but actually employ something like the Pomodoro technique, where you might work for 25 minutes or have a 25-minute meeting. Allow yourself 5 minutes at the end to make a cup of tea, like nip to the toilet, break from the work that you were doing, and then come back for a second and a third session. And Pomodoro technique will say like after 3 intense focus sessions to then have a slightly longer break of about 20 minutes. Now, although you might feel like, well, Alex, I've got all of these things to do and I can't actually afford to take breaks. It's like, how productive are you actually being when you don't take breaks and you don't give yourself enough time to actually recuperate your mental energy? And the last point of like leveraging your energy to ensure that your motivation levels stay high is avoiding cognitive overload. So avoid trying to work on everything. A lot of organizations and business do this terribly. They say that everything is a priority. Everything is the number one priority and must be done. Great businesses and great individuals really understand how to prioritize successfully and leverage their energy into the vital 1 or 2 things that are really going to shift the dial. So in summary, right, and thank you for those guys that have been on watching live and for anyone that's going to be watching on catch up. These are the 5 ways to boost your motivation consistently. Okay, number 1, get a vision that moves you emotionally to take action. Number 2, set goals that are aligned to your values. Number 3, start to shape the path so that you can see how you can achieve those goals and how you can start to break them down. Number 4, remove the need for an external stimulus so your motivation yo-yos or wanes, and try and use points 1 and 2, the vision and the values, to internalize your motivation and shift to a state of inspiration. And number 5, leverage your natural energy cycle. Not everyone's energy cycles are the same. I'm a morning person. I love getting up in the morning and getting stuff done. I feel really energized by doing that. That motivates me to do some of the harder things that I've got to do later on in the day. Some other people might be more of a night owl, for example. So your natural energy levels are better in the evening. So first of all, seek to understand what type of person you are and where your natural energies are, and then leverage that through structure and practice. Awesome. Well, thank you for everyone that's tuned in to watch The Science of Motivation. I appreciate it. Anyone that has any questions, please feel free to pop them in the comments and I'll loop back round and answer those. Other than that, thank you for tuning in, and I will see you